Welcome everybody. Another exciting the webinar by Dr. Donald Martin and Miss Deborah Zakarian. I'm sorry again, I always make mistake in
Oh, you
pronouncing.
got it. You got it.
You got it. You were very,
Correct.
very
Okay,
close.
yeah. So, so we have been doing the series of webinars, and today's webinar is about undergraduate application process because this is going to be very critical. Most of the students have shortlisted the universities. Now we are entering into the part one we are taking it today, and the part one will be the next month. You already have got a complete schedule, so the same link you can join it into that. And just those of you who have maybe new to today's webinar, Dr. Donald Martin, he was a former Dean of Admissions and Dean of Students at Columbia University and University of Chicago, both School of Business. Columbia University, is Ivy League university, and University of Chicago, one of the most prominent universities. And I just yesterday I was going to the website of University of Chicago. They today almost like 99 Nobel Prize winners I have from the either the students or the faculties or associated with University of Chicago, one of the most really prominent research university, Northwestern. He has been admitting students for many years, almost like 1,25,000 applications he has himself evaluated and admitted. And since 2008, he has been counseling the student across 50 countries in different continents. He's writing a lot of articles, and we have been associated for more than 12, 13 years now. And he has been a pillar of strength guiding the students, starting from university selection, profile evaluation, mentoring to the admissions. And with him is Deborah. So she will be taking the part of the session. She has excellent grip on the undergraduate admissions. She has been working with the students for many years. So with this, I request Dr. Donald Martin to start the presentation. You can start typing the questions midway also in a question and answer session. Once we finish our presentation, we will be, if any questions are there, we'll be very happy to take the questions. So hand over to Dr. Donald Martin.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dioris. And hello, everyone. It is a great pleasure to be back with you again for this fourth webinar in our 5-webinar series for prospective undergraduate students and their parents and school officials and educators. We are delighted, Ms. Deborah and I, to have the opportunity to spend this time with you every so often during this year. And we understand this is quite a very wonderful time in India of celebration of a very important festival. So thank you doubly for taking the time away from that to join us today for this presentation. Excuse me. I also want to introduce my esteemed colleague, Ms. Deborah Zakarian, who has been working with me for a couple years now in this process of working with undergraduate students. Deborah, it is a pleasure to have you back, and I can't wait to hear the part of our presentation today that you're going to provide. So welcome back.
Thank you, Dr. Don. It's truly a pleasure to be here this evening.
Great. Okay, so with that in mind, you know something now about Ms. Deborah, you know something about my background. I've been so fortunate to fall into, truly, I was offered a job out of college as an admissions counselor, knowing very little about that field. But it did not take me long. Once I'm so grateful I accepted that offer, because it opened the door to a career that I have now been in since 1980. So if you do the math, that's 43 years. And it's been a phenomenal career. And working with Dr. Dioris and his team over these past 13 years has been nothing but a pleasure. I know Dr. Dioris would never ask me to say this, but I'm going to say it. The Astute Academy is by far, truly, in my estimation, over the years I've worked with him and his team, the best career and educational preparation organization in all of India. They're way ahead of so many others in so many of the services they offer. And I consider it an honor to have been asked to work with Dr. Diorès all these years. So thank you, Dr. Diorès, again, for giving Deborah and I this opportunity today. Now, what are we going to discuss in this hour that we have together as part of, as Dr. Diorès said, this is a two-part webinar series, and I hope you'll join us for both parts, because there is so much involved in preparing an outstanding undergraduate application, so much involved. And yet, if you take the time to do the things that we're going to propose today, that we're going to discuss, we believe you will enhance the chance of getting admitted to one or more of the institutions that you will be applying to at whatever point that is. So here's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to take a few moments here in just a minute to talk about the biggest mistake that you as a prospective student can make. And then Ms. Deborah is going to come back on and share a little bit about preparing your resume, discuss the issue about academics and test scores, these things, very, very, very important part of your application. I'll get back on to discuss letters of recommendation, extracurricular, or you know what, I just think I may have messed up here. It might be Deborah that's taking that. We'll figure that out. No worries. We will definitely cover it for you. And then we'll close up with a few comments and we'll talk about the actual working opportunity we have with a student and how that might impact you. Then we'll, as Dr. Diorès mentioned, we're going to answer questions. And we love those. As you know, as Dr. Diorès has heard me say this so many times, we love questions. So at any point while we're presenting today, please write your questions in the designated space here on this link, on this Zoom call, because we will want to answer any and all questions that we can when we conclude our presentation. Okay, so with that in mind, let's jump in here. If I were speaking with you in person today, and I were to ask you, you know, what do you think is the biggest mistake prospective college students make every year? I wonder what would come to your mind. If I said, what do you think is the biggest mistake you could make? Well, actually, there are several that you could talk about in answer to this question. But I want to talk about one that I believe supersedes any of the other mistakes you might make. And that is not doing adequate research before you apply. Many prospective, and by the way, this mistake is made by prospective undergraduate students worldwide, including right here in North America, in the United States. This happens all the time, every year. Many prospective students have an idea, and it makes me angry because I believe they've been misled. But nonetheless, they have this perception that there are only 5 or 10 universities in the United States that they should consider, because they've heard these names over and over and over again. You heard Dr. Diorès mention the Ivy League. If I say that anywhere around the world, most people know what I'm talking about, that list of 8 universities. If I mention a few others in the United States, most people have heard of them. But sadly, many prospective students think those are the only universities that they should consider. And therefore, they don't spend any time doing research to really find the best program. Remember, please remember, the perception you have about the choices you're thinking or the options that you're thinking of for your undergraduate education, that's what happens after you've done your research, not at the beginning. And one of the services that Astute offers to our undergraduate clients, our students that we work with, is what we call a short list. And Ms. Deborah and I actually prepare a list of possible institutions for every single student we're working with. And do you know how many universities might be on that short list? There could be as many as 40 or 50. Now, obviously, our students are not going to apply to anywhere near that number, but it's a great way to start out doing your research and really getting to know these universities, and then making a determination whether or not they might be an institution you would be interested in. So please, please take the time to do your research. There are over 3,000 to 4,000 accredited, mind you. These are fully accredited undergraduate institutions in the United States. And that doesn't make sense that there would be only 5 or 10 that you want to think about. So please take the time to do your research as you go through this process. Now, as we approach the part of the presentation where we're going to get into some specifics about each part of your application, let me say there are 3 parts of your application over which you have the most control. They are your resume, your recommendation letters, and your personal statements or essays. Those are the 3 over which you have the most control. Today, we're going to be spending time talking about resumes and recommendation letters and academics and a few other things that will be very useful for you as we start talking about this. Next time, we're going to spend considerable time talking about essays and your statements of purpose. This is very, very critical, but we'll whet your appetite for that particular topic for November 9th. And now, as you've noticed, Ms. Deborah has rejoined us because we're going to start by talking about resumes today. That's our first topic. And Deborah is going to be taking us through that and several other areas of the application. And then I'll come back on at the conclusion of her comments. So, Ms. Deborah, it's all yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Don. Well, let's continue with talking about our application process and discuss preparing your resume. For every application, you will need to convey what you believe makes you a qualified admission candidate. You will want to share your greatest strengths and your accomplishments or your profile with each admissions committee. The critical document that summarizes all this information is what we call your resume. It is a summary or a snapshot, I like to say, of your high school experience and your qualifications. Even if you do not need to submit a resume for a particular school, we do suggest that you prepare one and submit one. If it is required, please make sure that you follow the directions and submit the kind of resume that the admissions committee is asking for. The resume is a very important document which helps you to be organized, and so we recommend that you prepare one which will not only help you throughout the application process, but will also be very important for your recommenders. And as we have stated here, if it is optional, we would recommend that you submit one because you want to provide as much information to each admissions committee as you can about yourself so they can get to know you and see if you would be a good fit for their program. Well, what does a resume look like? What is the format of a professional resume? Well, for the length, it's usually 1 to 2 pages. And for most high school students, 1 page is sufficient to list the various categories and information that you need to. It focuses on your academic history, your awards, your achievements, and what you have accomplished in high school. It also goes on to focus on your extracurricular activities and your volunteer work. It is very important for students to be involved outside of the classroom, either in clubs and organizations with their school and also in the community, and to be a well-rounded person. And of course, as the admissions committees take a holistic approach to looking at applications, they are looking for students who are willing to get involved. You also will include any work experience if you have that. Many students have a part-time job in high school, or perhaps they've done a project with a teacher at school or with a company. So that's information that you also would like to include. And as far as the typical resume sections, you usually begin with your name and your contact information at the top of the document. Many students choose to center the name and maybe left or right justify their email or their phone number. There are different ways to format that. And then you will follow with your academic information, your awards, your grades, AP classes that you've taken, your GPA. That will follow in the second section. And then you'll move on to your extracurricular activities and your volunteer work. This is also a great place to note any leadership positions that you've had within these organizations. And we encourage students to take those positions and get involved in leadership, both at school and outside in the community. And then your work experience, as we've suggested. If you've worked a job or been involved in some type of program, that is very good information to share. And then finally, many of our students choose to add a skills and interest section. And this is nice because it gives the admissions committee a personal look at you. For example, what special skills do you possess? Are you fluent in certain computer programs? You might want to list those. Many of our students speak several languages. You might list that in your skills section. And then for your interests, what do you like to do outside of school and outside of your other activities? Do you have certain hobbies? Do you like to cook or read or go hiking? And this is nice information to share because, as we said, the admissions committee gets to know you better and can see and get a hint of what you might like to be involved in outside of your schoolwork. And then moving on to some other resume tips, which you may or may not know, you want to use a professional font throughout your document. There are many fonts to choose from when you're setting up your resume, but some are easier to read than others. So keep that in mind, and you may choose to change the font size throughout your document, which is good for emphasis, but just make sure that you keep it the same throughout your document. You also want to be consistent with your bolding, your bullet points, and italicized words that you use. Many students like to bold and highlight the headings on their resume. So if you do that for the first or second heading, you want to do that throughout the document. If you're using bullet points, you want to make sure they're lined up correctly. The goal is to have your resume be easy to read and understand by those who are looking at it. Be honest and yet humble as you write your resume. Certainly, you want to list your qualifications and your awards and those special things about you, but do so in a gracious manner. We also recommend that you have someone else proofread your draft, or I would probably say your drafts. It may take more than one to get it the way that you really want to have it. Because when you write your resume, you know what you're saying. You can look at the document and understand. But if you hand that to a guidance counselor or a teacher or a parent and say, could you look at this for me? Feedback is very important. Perhaps they'll say, this looks great and I understand all of it. Or maybe they'll say, this section's a little hard to read, or I'm not sure what you're saying here. So you want to try to have someone else look at that and get another pair of eyes on the document before you finalize it. And remember, creating your resume is a great preparation for your, you guessed it, writing your personal statements and your essays, which you will be doing. And that is why we recommend that every student prepares one. It is a great tool to organize you and guide you through the application process, and your recommenders will greatly appreciate having that as they work on your recommendation letter. Well, now let's move on to another very critical part of your application, probably the most critical, if not one of the most, and that would be your grades and your test scores. We like to tell our students this phrase: apply yourself, apply yourself, apply yourself. You want to work as hard as you can in high school and get your very best grades. You may not always be in the 90th percentile or receive an A1 or A2 for your classes, but you want to do your best. And if you can show an upward trend or improvement with your grades, that is always looked upon very favorably. Your grades show your work and your dedication over time. So please apply yourself with your studies. You want to adequately prepare for your standardized tests, your SAT, your ACT. And as we mentioned in our September webinar, you want to stagger your test preparation and then what you're doing for your application process. You want to work ahead to study for your standardized tests and perhaps get your first test out of the way and then begin to work on your application process. There may be times where these two coincide. For example, many students will take a second SAT or ACT, perhaps in August or September of their 12th standard, and you may also be working on your common application at that time. But give yourself adequately time to prepare for your standardized tests so you can do your very best work. They are so important and they really help with scholarship opportunities. And finally, be ready to offer an explanation, but not an excuse, if your academic performance or your test scores are not as competitive as you might like them to be. Not every year is a student's best year in high school. And not every student who gets A's and high marks throughout high school does well on standardized tests. Some students face a hardship during high school, perhaps an illness or the death of a family member. Some students have to take on a job because of a financial situation. And this information is important for the admissions committee to know. So explain this in the optional essay on your common application or within a specific application, and explain your circumstance. And most importantly, how you've met this challenge and how you are moving ahead, because this really helps the admissions committee to get to know you and see if you would be a good fit for their program and for their institution. Well, now I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Don, and he's going to come and talk about another very important part of our application process, your letters of recommendation. Dr. Don?
Ms. Deborah, thank you so much for this very, very helpful and very relevant information about two very critical components of your application. And I want to pick up on something Ms. Deborah said, the very last point here under grades and test scores. Many applicants, I believe, have a false perception that some of the other candidates they're up against in the application process have a perfect application. There's no issues, there's nothing, everything is perfect. You know, that is not true. Dr. Dioris mentioned that I had the personal opportunity to evaluate over 125,000 applications during my time as a full-time admissions director or admissions dean. And do you know what? There was not one of those applications that was perfect. There were some outstanding applications, but none of us is perfect. My application to my undergraduate programs was not perfect. I did get admitted, but I didn't have a perfect. And the goal is not perfection. The goal is to do your best, to put your best foot forward and present the information you have to the committee. So, Ms. Deborah, beautifully said, beautifully done. Thank you so much. Now let's talk about some other components of the application, and one now that is much more important than many applicants may realize. Letters of recommendation are very critical and can make the difference in some cases between a student being offered admission and a student being offered or not being offered admission, I should say. Now, if this is so important, you might ask, well, Dr. Don, what do I need to keep in mind, or what's a good recommender? Well, a good recommender is someone who knows you in two ways: long enough and well enough to write that letter. Now, in your high school or in your 9th, 10th, 11th standard, you're going to work closely with some of your teachers. You may have someone who's helping you to guide you through some of the academic decisions you're making during your progression through high school. That might be a good person because that person will have known you and worked with you for a while. But this is very important that they really have, so that when they write their letter, they can say, I know this person. I've been working with them for 3 years, not just 2 months, but for a longer period of time. That makes that recommendation letter more credible. In order to make sure that your recommenders have time to do their letter for you, you want to confirm them early. It's my understanding that oftentimes students in the 11th standard might confirm a recommender toward the end of their 11th standard year, so that when they enter the 12th standard and start actually preparing those applications, they already know who that person is going to be, and they can send them their resume or any other information that that recommender might request. You also may want to have someone as a backup. Not that you would ask them right now, but just in case. This doesn't happen very often, but on occasion, the recommender who said they could help you, something happens and they can't. So rather than scrambling at the last minute, it would be helpful for you to have someone to serve as a backup, just in case the primary recommender is unable to actually follow through and write the letter. You want to provide helpful information for them. As we said, provide your resume for starters. If you've been working on your essay for the Common Application, now we're going to talk about essays next time, but if you've already started working on your essays, and we're going to be suggesting that you do that a little early instead of waiting until 2 weeks before that application is due. If you've done that, you could share, it may not be your final draft, but you could share a draft of your essay with the committee or with the letter, the recommender. So make sure that you are providing, this will help them to help you by writing a really strong letter for you. And finally, send a gentle reminder to your recommender before applying. Just a brief, thank you so much for doing this for me. Just a gentle reminder that I will be sending my application in, submitting my application next week or in 2 weeks. And also very important, once you get your notifications back, and let's say you applied to 7 institutions and you got into 6 or 5 or all 7 of them, you want to send a, excuse me, I'm going to grab a little drink of water here. You want to let that recommender know that you got in. And clearly their letter was a part of that reason that you got in. And you want to thank them for helping you. And they would be delighted to have an update. So please give them the information they need up front, confirm them early, and make sure you let them know the good news when you get admitted. All right, now let's shift gears, and in the final part of what I'm going to discuss as far as individual parts of your application is your extracurricular and volunteer activities. Again, as we just discussed with letters of recommendation, this also is a critical part of your application. It's not just good enough to have good grades and a good test score and maybe some AP courses. That's absolutely critical. But these other parts are very, very important, and again, can make a difference in whether or not you're offered admission. And keep in mind here, it is not always about the quantity, the number of extracurricular or volunteer activities you have, but rather the quality of them. What do I mean by that? Well, it could be that throughout your 9th, 10th, and 11th standard, you participated in a volunteer service at a nursing home in your community, or you helped with a drive to help the environment get better. Maybe your community decided they wanted to encourage people to use better trash receptacles, or really take care of the environment in some way. And you were involved in that for 3 years. Or you got involved in dance or a community sporting event in your hometown. And you did that repeatedly. One or two of those items are extremely powerful because they not only show that you have the ability to work outside of academics and socialize and get involved with others, but that you've done that over a period of time. This was not just a 2-month engagement. This was a 3-year, or maybe you even started some of these activities in your 7th, 8th standard. And you can point to the fact that I have some family members who, one of them was involved in dance for almost their entire life and continued with this all the way up through high school. Another was involved in sports for quite some time. These things show longevity, show your versatility, and show that you have the ability to interact with others outside of just what you're doing in your coursework or with your tests, with your standardized tests. So remember, it's not quantity, it's quality. You want to showcase, again, by what you're doing is demonstrating that you care about something kind of outside of yourself. You have a vested interest in bettering the world in some way, or that you are able to socialize with others. This is in college, you're going to be not only studying, but you're going to be interacting with your classmates all the time. You'll be rooming with someone. You'll have a roommate. And the degree to which you're able to successfully do that in some ways is demonstrated by your ability to socialize with others before you get to that campus. So this is very useful, a very important. It's why Ms. Deborah recommended that this be a very critical component of your resume. This needs to be very much highlighted by you in your application. These things should and can certainly align with your own personality and interests. In other words, the admissions committee doesn't have a top 10 list. Oh, these activities are more important than these. So if somebody says they did this, they get a higher mark in this section of the application. Not true. Not true at all. You need to choose extracurricular or volunteer activities that resonate with you. I love animals. And when my schedule permits within this coming year, I want to do some volunteer work at an animal shelter. I would love to do that because that's something I have a personal interest in. I might not have an interest in doing something else, and you don't have to. You want to choose, and usually if you love something like this, you're obviously going to want to stick with it for a longer period of time because it energizes you. You enjoy it. So there's no required list of these that you must choose. You choose what you would most like to do. And finally, this provides information and evidence to the admissions committee of what your genuine desire to make a difference, to have an impact, to make the world, in your world, a better place. This is very, very important. Again, it proves that you are what we call in the United States often when we're evaluating applicants, a well-rounded applicant. You have skills and interests and volunteer and extracurricular, and you have great academics. You have great letters of recommendation. All of these things together cause you to be viewed as a more well-rounded applicant. And that is something admissions committees definitely look at. Okay, so we just talked about letters of recommendation, extracurricular activities. As we close out our webinar, I hope you've been asking questions. If not, I hope you're going to start typing them in now, because we will answer any questions that you have at all. We would love to do that. But in closing, just a few reminders. Please, as I said at the outset of this webinar, do your research, do your homework. Don't make the mistake of thinking there are only 5 or 10 institutions that deserve your time and attention. That's simply not true, and that's to your detriment. Apply yourself always, as Ms. Deborah said. Apply yourself. Do your best. That may not mean you get a 100 or an A1, whatever, every single time. But it shows determination and persistence, and that's something that a recommender can talk about for you. Next, again, be ready to explain less than competitive credentials. And remember, just about every applicant has them. You are by far not alone in that at all. Next, choose good recommenders and give them information that will help them to provide excellent letters for you. And then don't underestimate the value of extracurricular and volunteer activities. These last 2 items, recommenders again, extracurricular, volunteer, these are critical components of your application. They help you to be viewed as a more well-rounded applicant. Okay, I'm going to ask Ms. Deborah to come back on the screen with me here as I talk about the work that both of us do with 𝐂𝐡𝐞𝐜. It's our privilege, as we said, to have been working. I'm going to have to update this slide because I should now say for over 13 years as opposed to over 10 years. The time has gone by fast, but it has been such a privilege to work with 𝐂𝐡𝐞𝐜. We enjoy it immensely. The acceptance rate we've enjoyed with our undergraduate mentoring students. Now, we haven't been doing the undergraduate mentoring as long as the graduate, but so far, and we realize it may not stay this way forever, but so far, 100% of the undergraduate applicants with whom we've worked have been admitted, and I believe most all, if not all of them, have received a scholarship. So it's been a very, very successful collaboration. We can start mentoring as early as the 9th standard. We actually are working with students now in the 9th standard, and we're able to work with them all the way through the 10th, 11th, and then helping them in the 12th standard to actually get their applications ready to submit. And lastly, we can assist, as I mentioned, we do definitely do school searches for our students. We call it shortlisting, resume prep, essay review, whatever it is that our students might want us to be involved in helping them. We are there and we can do that. And we have loved doing it. So with that now, that completes our presentation for this particular session of handling the application process, part 1. If you found this helpful, please join us on November 9th for the second of these 2 presentations on the application process. But at the moment, I'm going to turn the microphone back over to Dr. Diorris for if we have any questions that have come in. Again, keep writing them. We've got some time to answer them if you have any. And Dr. Diorris, let me just say again, what a privilege and pleasure it is to work with you and all of the team at 𝐂𝐡𝐞. It is a joy. And I will now turn it over to you to take it from here.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's my pleasure working with you. So thank you again for such an excellent webinar. And this is all the things which is coming from years of 43 years of the working students working both sides as a dean admissions as well as working with the students. You will not find most of the information anywhere in the internet. So really, again, thank you very much. And let's come with the questions. So let's
Okay.
take the first question. It has got two parts. First question.
Okay.
One part I can answer and then second part you can take. So this
All
is
right.
Ryan, which is saying, is there any aptitude test for the students, which course they take it? You can visit 𝐂𝐡𝐞𝐫.com. We have the psychometric analysis where the skills, ability, and personality are mapped to the career, and you can take the 1 hour test and we'll be happy to guide it. The question to Dr. Donald Martin, if the student has opted for science in high school, but however he feels now he wants to have a change of interest while pursuing the undergraduate program, can he change his career and apply for a different program?
That is an excellent first question, or second question, I should say. I'm thankful that you asked this. The answer is yes. You absolutely can express an interest in a different subject area as you're approaching your college years than what you were focusing on as a 9th, 10th, and 11th, and 12th standard. And let me also say something that I hope will be encouraging to you. Most students do not have to declare the actual major that they're going to pursue until the end of their freshman or sophomore year at the institution. You are not going to be evaluated based on the subject area you're interested in, that most of the time. Now, in some cases, with certain programs, for instance, like engineering or others, you may have to apply right at the start for something like that. But otherwise, you do not need to declare what you're going to major in until you're already enrolled. So if you have already made that change and you know, for instance, you were I believe you said you've been focusing on the sciences right now, but you might want to switch maybe to psychology, maybe business, something a little different. You can certainly indicate that in your application if you would like to, but just know that in most of the cases, you're not going to declare your major right at the same time that you're applying. You will declare it later on. Ms. Deborah, did I miss anything there? Anything you wanted to add?
No, I think that was good. And also, there are many students that do change their majors once they get to the institution. And if before you apply, you have a feeling that you might want to do something different, you can even address your change of heart in your essays and let the admissions committee know kind of what your new track is going to be. So that's certainly not a problem, as Dr. Don has shared.
Yeah, thank you. The great answer. Just want to clarify, the freshman and sophomore means first year and second year, because many of the Indian students may not be aware what is so it's the first year and second year. So you are allowed, you can make changes. Many students make changes after going there, after spending even 1 year, or even after 2 years, you can change your major, and it is not a very, very difficult task to do. Another question is how the AP exam scores at admissions in United States. If 3 subjects like English, biology, and psychology are chosen, if I'm eager to pursue medical in USA, how the AP score impact the admission process? In India, we have to take externally. It is not a part of the school administration. So that is why just I wanted to clarify before Dr. Donald Martin answers this. So he is interested in medical, and he takes English, biology, and psychology. How the AP scores will impact the admissions?
I'm going to take a stab at this, and then I'm absolutely going to ask my colleague, Ms. Deborah, to comment, because she has had some direct experience with the AP process as well. My comment would be this. Again, just as I mentioned before, when it comes to telling an admissions committee what your major is going to be, that's not a part of the application that in and of itself is going to cause you to be admitted or denied. However, with the AP, having been able to successfully score on 1 or 2 AP exams, if you have 3, that's even better, but for sure, 1 or 2 does demonstrate a bit more about your academic success and ability, and does place you in a more competitive position because most US applicants are submitting AP scores. Now, unfortunately, you have to do this as a separate undertaking in India. In the US, AP is very much part of the high school experience. So there's a bit more of an ease with which you can study and prepare for these tests. You have to do that more on your own. However, what that does to enhance your application is to demonstrate that you took the time to do that, that you didn't have that opportunity to do it as you were in your 10th or 11th standard, but you took it upon yourself to do this extra studying and take the exam. That's a very positive thing. Whether or not the subject areas align with your wanting to go to medical school is secondary. That's not as important, in my opinion, as the fact that you have some AP exam scores to share and that they were pretty good. Ms. Deborah, anything that you would like to add here, because you have a lot of experience and knowledge on this issue?
Yes, I agree. The AP classes and exams are very important. We do realize that our students in India have to work on this outside of school. And as Dr. Don said, that is very noteworthy that you're pursuing that. It does give you a little leg up. It puts you in the category of students who are also submitting those, and that you can handle the rigors of that type of program. It also allows you, once you are coming to a particular institution, to not have to take certain entry-level courses. If you've received a 4 or 5 on your AP exam, you may be able to not have to take your basic English class or a basic math class, and that can help the student move quicker through their degree process. So the APs are very important, and we realize that you are doing them separately, so do your best with those. And as Dr. Don said, the subject matter is not as important as the fact that you are actually taking these exams.
Thank you, Ms. Deborah.
Yeah, thank you very much. And also the College Board website, which is a AP site, if you go and you put the career, they have got a fantastic tool which is available on College Board, which will tell you what are the subjects which are related to your field of study, if you have the intended field of study. And any of the subjects, if you take it, definitely, as mentioned, you can get those subjects waived off and you can do the faster way to complete the program. Another question, I have the SAT score of 1300 out of 1600. And from 9th to 12th, almost, I have got a 3.5, 3.6 GPA. I'm interested in mechanical engineering. My question is that what will be the ideal deadline for me for higher acceptance, whether I should apply in early action or a regular action?
Okay, I believe this question is based on the credentials that, and by the way, congratulations to this student. A 1300 is a pretty good score on the SAT, and the other grades. I believe you said you have approximately a 3.5 GPA. Congratulations on both of those accomplishments. In terms of when to apply, whether you take early action or the regular deadline, I really don't believe there's any preference between those two, except that you do this when you believe your application is ready. In other words, I've often said an outstanding regular decision application is far better than a mediocre early action application where you rushed to try to get it in just because you wanted to get an early decision. I would urge you to make sure that if you're going to go early decision, you certainly can do that, but just make sure that your application is really ready in every sense of the word, that you've spent the time to prepare it. Now, let me also distinguish between something called early action and early decision, because this is very important. If you see early action on an application instructions page on a website, you need to be very sure to read what that means, because for some institutions, early action means that if you use that option and you get admitted, you have to accept that offer. If they admit you, you have to enroll. So please be sure you understand what is meant by early action. Usually, early decision does mean it's like an early deadline, but if you get admitted, you don't have to go. But make sure you understand what you're applying for, because technically, if it's early action, it's my understanding that if you get admitted under that option, you must attend. Ms. Deborah, anything about that?
I think we might have those backwards. I
Did
think
I have them backwards? Okay.
the early decision is where you would have to attend the institution.
Okay.
Early action lets the student know they're admitted earlier. But as Dr. Dunn said, the most important thing is having your application ready, and the best when it's ready to go. And some students, even when they apply for early action or even early decision, may be deferred to a later date if they've received a lot of applications, and you might end up having to wait for the regular decision deadline anyway. So as your application,
Deborah, thank you.
And go ahead.
Thank you so much. I apologize, but I'm so thankful that you corrected me. So once again, just to clarify, there are 3 types of application deadlines that you may have for options when you get ready to apply. The first we'll call early action, which means you just apply earlier and you hear sooner, but you're not obligated to attend. Early action means wait. Early decision means if you do get admitted for that, you are obligated to attend. And then regular decision is just the regular deadline. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, it's excellent. From the Indian context, I may add one more thing.
Okay.
Early decision, you should not be going more than one. Any university which is your dream university, and if you are admitted, you are 100% going to take the admission, only that university should go, provided all the riders with Dr. Donald Martin has said, that it is you are ready with the complete application. It is not you are rushing to just because of the deadlines are there. So you have to make a perfect application. You should be ready with all essays and everything at the very at that moment of time, and then that is your dream university. Then only you go for early decision. Otherwise, standard is best. There is no problem in if you have great profile, go with the standard. Your chances of admissions are even higher into that particular part.
So basically what we're saying is, for the option where you would apply, and if you get admitted, you go, you commit to go. That you only do that with one school, just one. You don't do that for all of them, because then you're being dishonest. You can't obviously enroll in 5 programs. So that one where, to Dr. Dior's point, where it's your dream school, you know in your heart, if you get in there, you're going. All of your other applications, you're going to discontinue. That's the one to use, that option where if you get in, you go. Just one.
That's right. Another question, should the letter of recommendation be from the recommenders having the subject related to the field we have chosen to apply in undergraduate studies, or it can be from anybody whose subjects we scored good?
Excellent question, and it is the latter. You can have recommendations from individuals that you did well with in their courses. It doesn't have to be in your chosen field, not at all. And again, more importantly, we would assume if you've done well in their classes that they've gotten to know you and have been working with you for a while. That would be an ideal recommender. Yes, it does not have to match your field of study for the recommender. Not at all. Good question.
I'm going to attempt a AP exam in next year in May 2024, but I'm applying now for the next year. Now, is there any provision by which I can submit my AP scores after completion of application?
All right, I want to make sure I'm understanding this question before I respond. This applicant is planning to apply. They're getting ready to apply to start their undergraduate education this coming year in the fall of 2024 is what I'm hearing. Yes. And furthermore, after they have submitted their application, well after, they're going to, by the way, congratulations on pursuing the AP. I think that's a very commendable thing to be doing. You're going to take your AP exam in May of 2024. My best response is it could be that by that time, the institution to you, which are some of the ones that you've applied to, may have already made a decision on your application. So it might be too late for purposes of rendering a decision on your application. Now, that said, you can indicate in your application at some point, and I would actually urge you to do so, to let the admissions committee know that you are taking an AP course and let them know what subject area in May of 2024. The reason I'm suggesting that you do that is because in some cases, if an admissions committee is interested in you, but they may have a concern, or they may want to wait to see what your AP score is before making a final decision, they may do something that is called placing you on a waiting list, which means they didn't make a final decision yet, but nor were you denied. They're going to hold your application for a bit longer. And I want to tell you something. If you get placed on the waiting list, that absolutely means every time that they are interested in you. Otherwise, they would deny your application. If they put you on a waiting list, they're interested. And they might say, we are placing you on a waiting list until we receive the score from your AP exam. So I would urge you to tell them that you're doing this, but also being realistic and keeping in mind that for several of these institutions, they may not wait to get that score. They may already make a decision on your application. They could still admit you for sure, but they might not be able to wait. It would be up to them.
And common application has got a provision where you can declare that you are taking the examinations in 2024, as well as you can put your expected predictive score also. I am expecting this particular subjects, I am taking it, and the universities may decide it. But most of the time, before the result of AP exams, I think decisions are made. Very, very rarely the universities will wait that long or put you, your decisions are not. When most of the time the AP results are there almost in June month. And by the time, I don't think so, and particularly international students, because we have the visa and other formalities to be completed. So maybe they can wait for American citizens, but for the international student, they would like to take the decision fast for the visa purposes.
That's a very good point.
Dr. Diores and Dr. Don. Also, one of the things that our students do here in the US on their resume, like we said, under academics, they will have listed the AP classes that they've had and the ones that are projected for the following spring. And that way, when they are submitting their applications, it would be on their resume, as well as Dr. Diores said, would be listed in the common application. So that's a way to let them know you're working on those.
Yeah. So, do the scholarship and acceptance chances vary for early action and the regular decisions?
If I'm understanding this question, the student is asking if scholarships are more readily available if you apply early than if you wait and apply for the regular deadline. My standard answer is no. Scholarships are awarded to individuals admitted for both of those, early or regular. Now, in fact, at the institutions where I served as Dean of Admissions, we actually held certain scholarship funds so that we had them available when we admitted students from the regular application deadline. We did not award scholarships only to the first applicants that we heard from. We awarded them. So if you apply for regular decision or regular notification and are admitted, of course, not every admitted student receives a scholarship, but there are certainly scholarship dollars available for whatever particular deadline you choose.
Yeah, so that's what we are guiding, and as a part of mentoring program, we will try to really build a profile so that you can get the best results. So I think that's all the questions here. I'm not seeing any new question.
Okay.
So really, thank you very much, Dr. Donald Martin and Ms. Deborah, for really excellent session. And I think every student must have really benefited. We will be circulating the link of this recording tomorrow, so that those who have missed out or you can want to send it to your friends or anything, you are welcome to do that. So thank you very much again, Dr. Donald Martin and Ms. Deborah, for fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
It was a pleasure to be with you, and we wish everyone a wonderful continued festival in India.
Yes,
okay.
enjoy.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
For now.
Thank you.